Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 324, being recorded on October 29th, 2014. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
And this is a podcast where we talk about computer hardware. There was something funny that happened earlier, but we lost it, so now we're just doing that. We record the show on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and if you are interested, you can watch us do so live at pcper.com/live. You go there, we have a chat room, you can hang out with people, you can make fun of us, you can ask us questions, we pay attention before and after the show. And if you are interested in that, but maybe you're kind of a forgetful type, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific kind of just slips right through your mind. If you go to pcper.com/subscribe, you can sign up for a little mailing list. It's pretty simple. We ask for your name, we ask for your email, you hit that fancy submit button, and we will send you an email sometimes an hour before, sometimes 25 minutes before, depending on, I don't know.
Sometimes during.
Yeah, sometimes during. Depends on when I had to eat dinner, I guess. And we send you an email that says, hey, we're over here recording live, blah, blah, blah. But not just for the podcast. We do other cool events. A couple weeks ago, the last 2 weeks, we did Borderlands, the pre-sequel streams.
Yeah.
We gave away a ton of NVIDIA hardware. We gave away three G-Sync
me.
monitors. Not to Josh, not to Alan, not to Jeremy.
3 G-Sync monitors?
We gave away 3 G-Sync monitors. We gave 2 ROG Swifts and an Acer 4K. We gave away GTX 980, game keys, SLI bridges. We gave away a lot of stuff. So don't miss out on those, because here's the secret. In the month of November, we'll be doing 2 more game streams for a different game. Different. That's how you spell it. So that's how I say it.
So I'll be gone till November. January, February, March, April, May.
Well,
You'll hear me crying.
There's only 2 more days of October, so you should be back soon.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So that's pcper.com/subscribe if you want to do that. But let's jump into crap that happened this week. Starting with Civilization Beyond Earth was released. This is an update to Civilization. Does anybody on the podcast play a lot of Civ 5?
Not anymore.
Nope.
Not anymore? But you did?
I went back to Civ 4.
Oh.
I honestly like Civ 4 a lot better.
This does not surprise me.
No, it really shouldn't. But I did try the Alpha Centauri demo, played the 100 turns, and it's not horrible.
Yeah.
And if you're not a big Civ fanatic, you may well enjoy it very much.
Well, Beyond Earth is much more like Civ 5. It's the full Civ experience, but obviously, as the title would insinuate, it happens beyond Earth.
Is that the one you had to do?
But not
weird,
an Alpha
funky?
Centauri.
I was doing the benchmarking stuff last week, yeah.
Which one was the one you had to do like a command line or weird console tweak to get? No, not that one.
There was an INI file change we had to make
To do multi-GPU.
Multi-GPU on Mantle.
Oh, okay.
So the reason we wanted to test this game is because it's new, it's interesting. It's also a Mantle title, meaning that it has a full Mantle implementation from the ground up. It has some interesting things. They actually, so here's what the Mantle editions, an EQAA, which is essentially MSAA with more coverage samples, right? So if you have 4x EQAA, you have 4 color samples and 8 coverage samples. In some scenarios, that makes a significant difference. In other scenarios, it makes no difference. But the end result is you will always have at least the quality of 4x MSAA.
Would you say that there are multiple factors to the AA?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say that. So what's interesting is whether or not you're running DirectX 11 or Mantle, EQAA is enabled for all Radeon cards.
EQ.
It stands for...
Extra quality.
Oh.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
But it is not enabled for NVIDIA cards. NVIDIA cards like...
Because it doesn't have EQAA.
Well,
right?
EQAA is an AMD-specific feature.
Yeah.
NVIDIA's version is called CSAA. No, CSAA.
Yeah,
coverage
it's a
sample. Coverage sample anti-aliasing,
Okay.
which basically does the exact same thing. And you can enable it in this game if you go into the NVIDIA control panel.
But you have to enable it for that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's in Mantle and DirectX. It has multi-threaded command buffering in the game, which basically improves CPU utilization for this game. And Civ games have tended to be very CPU heavy.
Yeah.
Right. The most interesting thing is split frame rendering for multi-GPU. Now, in the Mantle version of the game, remember that in Mantle, multi-GPU was completely at the discretion and the requirement of the game developer and the game engine. Right? The control panel doesn't handle it, and AMD's drivers don't necessarily handle it. They basically present rendering resources to the game, and the game has to figure out how to handle it.
Okay.
So with split frame rendering, they which is a thing that has existed for a long time but went away because of complications with game engines. They basically the game developer Firaxis, decided, well, okay, in our game, we're not worried about raw frame rate. We're much more worried about kind of smoothness and latency of mouse input.
Okay.
Right. So what they decided to do was re-implement an AFR, and the thing that makes it interesting is that there are some advantages to AFR in that you don't have that single frame buffer kind of latency involved where, one GPU is scanning out while one GPU is rendering what is actually happening in the game right now.
Right.
And so you always have that one frame delay. And with split frame rendering, exactly as it says, each GPU would take equal workload of the screen, usually close to half.
Yeah.
And would render, and then output at the same,
and
one
theoretically
master
go
GPU
twice as
stitch it
fast.
together.
Yeah.
So the idea would be that your GPU is never working on the frame that's being displayed is never not the frame that it's also just finished working on.
Yeah.
Right. So that can't happen in a lot of game engines. It's not an option for SLI and Crossfire today for any other game. Right. This is a Mantle specific thing. And they go into a lot more details. Check out the story if you want more information on kind of why the developer decided to do that, and what their expectations were for scaling percentages and stuff. They basically say that we're much more worried about frame rate consistency as opposed to frame rate peaks, right? Like hitting higher average frame rates. Now, what's interesting about this is because it's a Mantle game, means we can't test it on our normal methods, right? There's no overlay software for Mantle.
Right.
Battlefield 4 introduced that overlay, but that was on a per game thing. It wasn't a Mantle specific deal. So we ended up having to use the Civ 5 integrated benchmark, which outputs a very long nondescript CSV file of frame times. The only reason I bring that up is because there were issues with it, right? So here's a graph that shows the blue line is the in-game frame times. The orange line is frame times as reported through Fraps. And then the gray line is actually frame times as reported by our frame rating, kind of our capture system, the benchmarking method we have used for a couple years now.
Yep.
Here at PC Perspective. Right, they're all fairly close. There's a little bit of variances. You can see that the frame rating is actually a little bit smoother on the ends, but in the middle you kind of get the same.
Is that offset
result.
just a...
It's offset because there's the in-game result is actually measuring all 50 seconds, and with Fraps and frame rating, I'm only measuring 45 because I have to manually hit the button to start and manually hit the button to stop.
Okay.
So
that's not a significant... The little offset is not the significant part of that.
No.
Yeah.
That's all. All those results are with an R9 290X. The issue is if you look at this graph, which shows a single GTX 980, the difference is obvious, right? So the gray line is our frame rating capture system. So that's what's actually being shown on the screen. The orange line and the blue lines, which have this wide section of very highly variant frame times.
It's like it's alternating high and low.
Yeah, I think it's actually going like, for the most part, you're looking at 12, 24, 12, 24, 12, 25, something
It's basically
back
just
and forth
bouncing
like
on either side of the...
And both the in-game benchmark and Fraps see it that way, but
Yeah.
that's not how it's actually presented on the screen.
Right, because the frame rating is actually looking at the screen.
Right. Now, there are reasons why both might be correct. Right?
Why is that?
If the game sees the frame at a totally different time than when frame rating, when when it's actually sent out, right?
Okay.
So what could be happening here is NVIDIA is manually smoothing out those frames through their frame pacing algorithms in their driver, so that they are presented in a more smooth manner.
So the game thinks it's drawing them at alternating speeds.
Right.
But
which in and of itself, potentially could be problematic depending on how the game
depends on what you're doing.
Well,
right?
it depends on it could negatively affect, say, the simulation time inside the game.
Okay.
But because most of those simulation times are based on averages, and if you look, the gray line happens to be in pretty much a perfect average of the middle of those.
Right.
That it was not an issue when you were playing it, when we were messing around with the benchmark. It had no issues. So that being said, what we decided to do was for all DirectX, AMD, and NVIDIA results, we used frame rating. And for Mantle, we had no other option, so we had to use the in-game results.
Right.
And the basic single GPU results are the Mantle version of Civ 5 is better than the DirectX version of Civ 5 for AMD.
So that graph you just had up.
Yes. So the green line's NVIDIA.
Yep.
Orange line is Mantle. Red line is AMD DirectX. So, the direct comparisons are red line versus green line for NVIDIA versus AMD DirectX.
Right.
And then the orange line is what the Mantle improvements get you. And you can clearly see there that the AMD, it's pretty similar here, but in that same area, we'll say the 18 to 35 second mark of this test, it's much slower and there's more variation.
Okay.
Whereas both the NVIDIA and Mantle ones
look pretty even.
Are pretty even and smooth, right? And you can see how that lays out in terms of average and minimum frame rates. The average frame rate between NVIDIA DX11 and AMD Mantle are pretty close.
Yep.
Mantle has a slight edge. AMD DX11 pretty far behind. And if you look at minimums, minimum frame rate, the Mantle is actually a little bit better as well. You can see there's a spike in our testing there that caused that.
With Mantle though, like whoever built this game, whoever coded it, they could have conceivably just kind of done very similar things, just so that in the end, then they just worked out very similar on frame rates.
What do you mean?
Like, supposedly you get more of an advantage with Mantle, or is it for this example just the fact that even though the 980 might be a faster card, but Mantle is helping the other card catch up and be basically dead even.
Yeah. I think it's a coincidence that it's dead even.
Because that's really the same number.
Because if you look at 4K, if you look at the 4K result, they're not dead even. Mantle's actually a little bit faster, but there's still a performance difference between NVIDIA and AMD's DirectX 11.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at that, you see a similar result. These are single GPU results. If you look at multi-GPU, you see other things that crop up, right?
Yeah, extra variance.
Here's what's interesting. Actually, let me see which one of these graphs. We'll actually use this one here, the 25 by 14.
So which one's the orange line?
Orange line is Mantle. So notice that it's actually slower for a majority of the time than the NVIDIA SLI results. We're using 980 SLI and then 290X Crossfire. But what it does is it has much less variance throughout the entirety of the benchmark run.
Yep.
Right. So the end result is if you look at it, the average frame rate of NVIDIA's 980 SLI setup is way better than what Mantle provides or what AMD provides under DX11.
Okay.
And if you look at it, the 290X Crossfire and Mantle and DX11 actually provide very similar average frame rates.
Right.
But look at the minimums, right? The Mantle implementation of Crossfire is way better than the DirectX.
It never dips lower than...
And the Mantle is better than the SLI. Yeah. So, experience-wise, probably the 290X Crossfire is the best experience for multi-GPU at that resolution. And if you look at it here, again, you see a same thing where it's slower for majority time, faster for some, but it's more consistent. In the green bars, you see a lot of back and forth. The red bar, you see a lot of back and forth. And again, the end result, NVIDIA is faster. Minimum frame rate's pretty close as well.
It may be smoother,
spike up front.
It may be smoother, but it does look a considerable deal slower, though. Would probably be noticeably slower in that case.
115 versus 82?
Yeah.
I think so. But once you get over 82,
it's hard to tell.
If it's smooth, would you rather have smoother performance or more performance? Right? There's obviously there's weighting either way. How much more performance versus how much smoother?
But once you're past the 80s, though, can you even tell the variance at that?
I think you would be able to.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an interesting kind of experiment into things to see that, right? And so the takeaways are, if you look at just at DirectX 11, the NVIDIA results are way better than the AMD results.
Yep.
They're significantly faster. They're more consistent, and you don't have any of those issues. But what Mantle actually did for AMD was kind of give it the win, if you will, in that game, in terms of providing better performance single GPU and more smoothness in
more consistent
GPU.
performance.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting little dive into Mantle. So that's they've got, what else do they have coming up in Mantle? Does anybody remember what games they have coming up with Mantle other than this?
That Lichdom, which is out already.
Yeah.
Doesn't it have Mantle, or is it only True Audio?
I don't know. Oh, Dragon Age has Mantle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Star Citizen, whenever the hell that decides to come out, will have it.
Why bother? It's already made all the money it needs.
That's true. Mirror's Edge 2, whenever that comes out. So anything based on Frostbite would have Mantle support. But NVIDIA is going to have Assassin's Creed Unity, Far Cry 4, whatever that actually turns out to be, right? They don't have their own proprietary API, but they have GameWorks and all the other stuff. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about all that when those games creep out. So I think it's a really interesting discussion, even if you have no interest in Civ 5 or a Civ Beyond Earth as a game itself, to go read that story and look at what those results look like. Sebastian posted a review of the ECS LIVA.
Leave me alone.
Okay, we're going to go with LIVA. The LIVA, which is like, it's a tiny computer. How tiny is it, you ask? There it is next to a CD.
That's pretty tiny.
It's pretty tiny.
You couldn't even put a CD in there.
There's the motherboard.
Wow.
And where's my favorite picture? Oh, there it is. There's the motherboard next to an SSD.
Smaller than a 2.5-inch SSD.
Smaller than a 2.5-inch SSD. Obviously not in Z height, but you get the idea. And you can tell connectivity-wise, you're looking at USB 3, USB 2, gigabit. Is that gigabit Ethernet?
I think so.
I think it is.
HDMI, VGA.
HDMI, VGA, passively cooled, of course. So this is an ECS mini PC kit. It's based on Bay Trail. It's got 2 gigs of memory, eMMC storage, which is slowish.
It's okay, but
it's,
slowish, yeah.
Whatever. What are you going to do? 64 gigs or 32 gigs. It does have gigabit Ethernet, 2-channel audio, 802.11n, Bluetooth 4.0, USB 3, I already mentioned. And it's this model that we reviewed doesn't come with Windows 8.1 with Bing, but I think did they announce one Tuesday they announced another version of this that ships with Windows 8.1 with Bing, which is the version of Windows 8.1 that is they don't give it directly to consumers, but they give it to OEMs to include with super low cost devices like this. And I say super low cost because this is $179. And you don't have this comes with the memory, right? Like you don't have to add
That's it.
anything to this.
You turn it on, right? You have to install the OS, but
you have to have your own operating system. You can see it's powered by USB. Right? It has a USB power brick, right?
Does it say how many watts?
The power adapter supports standard micro USB connector that outputs 5 volts and up to 3 amps.
So it's 15 watt.
So less than most of your chargers.
I think it's supposed to run on a 10 watt though. I think
it probably
that may
could
have just been a charger that they threw in there.
Okay. Yeah. So you can see
it's
again the
probably
logo there.
relatively forgiving.
Yeah, probably.
I would want a little bit of headroom just in case you tried to plug a USB powered device into the USB port on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Then, you kind of need a little more, right?
Yeah, but it's the LIVA. What are you going to be plugging into it?
I know, right?
Here is the performance of that eMMC. Not awful, like in terms of max sequential.
Yeah.
100 megs read, 41 write, but you get into the 4Ks and they're pretty low.
That's to the point where you'd notice it's slower than a typical SSD for like your OS and stuff. But I mean, it would still work. It'd still be faster than a hard drive. No, really.
Eat that, hard drives.
Yeah.
In terms of performance, here is PC Mark score. He ran that. But this device isn't meant to be benchmarked. It's not. It's not going to wow people with scores.
Yeah.
So he tested things like HD playback. So one negative, 1080p YouTube under Windows and Flash, not so great. 720p was fine.
Yep.
Was it dropping frames? What?
He just said it was stuttery.
Okay.
It was not smooth. CPU utilization was at 100%.
Flash.
But then he installed Ubuntu.
Well, under Windows, he was able to get 1080p working in MKV under VLC just fine.
Yeah.
So
that might have just been something funky with.
It's just Flash. It's inefficiency of Flash decoding 1080p video, and it could have been like really high bitrate stuff versus the MKV could have been a bit lower bitrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with hitches, it makes it seem so much more cinematic.
That's right. Yeah. They didn't want to actually run higher than 24 frames per second.
I wouldn't. I mean, so he was just trying to play 1080p YouTube, right? Or is YouTube HTML5?
Well, you could do both. He only tested Flash.
Okay.
He didn't actually test HTML5, but I don't know how.
I would imagine that would be better, like Chrome.
I would think it would be better. I don't know if it would be that much better, but it would be better. Total power draw, by the way, 3.2 watts.
Wait.
at idle.
Oh, okay, idle.
And full load was 9.5 watts.
Ooh, all 9 watts.
Right. And that's almost in the, like, for all the other processors we test, that's like almost in like the error fields.
You can hook it up to a USB battery pack.
That's
and
true.
run it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a reasonable
And it's
while.
got Wi-Fi. It could, I don't know, do something.
Yeah,
Headless.
It's pretty cool.
it's true.
But Jeremy, you were saying he installed Ubuntu on
he
it as well.
Put a 64-bit Ubuntu on it. Found two very obvious things. First was that the Wi-Fi wasn't working quite right. It's in a beta stage of the driver. This will change, so it will
Hope so.
come back.
Yep.
But on the other hand, he found that multitasking and just general overall resources of the OS significantly lower. So he was actually seeing overall better performance on it. And apart from, the fact that you could make those wireless drivers work, it's just playing around with betas and it takes a bit of effort to try and force it to work. But this thing is going to work on Linux, so you don't even need to pay for an OS.
Jeremy, have you played Lords of the Realm 2?
I'm looking at that and thinking that I remember it, but I can't remember where I would have played it.
It seems like a pretty Jeremy game to have played.
So, retro PC gaming only need apply here when you're talking about a 9.5 watt system.
Hey, but
So,
I
you
bet
know,
it does
this-
it
Yeah,
very
because
well.
that was an old Sierra game,
Yeah.
for sure.
Imagine how many watts you drew playing that back in the day. On
Oh, it was not 9.
You didn't draw 9 watts then.
These are essentially tablets without a screen and put in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
which is awesome.
like this picture of
Strap it to every TV you own.
a
Yeah.
fractal design case that Sebastian is working on as well with the LIVA right next to it. So, so it's a pretty neat little device. Again, it's $180. The weakness is underpowered as a Windows PC. I think that's
It's fair.
this is not a multitasking powerhouse type device.
Yeah.
But it could be interesting as a little, hobby device or something like that. But if you want to use it as a machine, you absolutely can. Just be aware of its limitations in the performance metric.
For its cost, it's still pretty damn good for even for a Windows PC.
I mean,
if it's limited.
keep in mind, it only has 2 USB ports as well. So if you hook up a keyboard and a mouse,
Yeah.
that's it. So you got to have a hub if you want to do anything like that. But or have a keyboard that has a USB port on it.
Maybe a
or
powered
whatever.
hub, depending on what
I
keyboard
would
and
say
mouse you try to plug
I'd say
in.
that makes sense. It's silent, right? It's completely passive, very small, ultra low power, pretty good connectivity for that size, wireless card included, and audio over HDMI makes home theater PC applications possible.
It's true.
Again, performance issues. Thing maybe be interesting. Could you put Windows Media Center on it? Get one of those USB tuner cards.
Maybe? Well, not the USB ones, but the network-based
The
ones.
network-based
Yeah.
tuner. Yeah.
It might just work.
Kind of pushing it for the CPU power, maybe. But
Storage is only 64 gigs. That would probably be your issue.
well, you could have it.
External.
You could have it mount a network share drive, and then that's
All
where
right,
it would put its videos.
Getting complicated.
and
I like it.
It's kind of complicated. It would use your network a lot, but
yeah.
Also
posted today, Ken wrote up a review of the Steiger Dynamics Maven Core. It's a whole-
Did no such thing. Must have been a ghostwriter.
Yeah, I actually wrote it, but I felt bad for him every once in a while, so I put his name on stuff.
Isn't this sort of the exact opposite of the last one?
It is a
We've gone from underpowered HTPC to, good God, you're
Yes.
calling that an HTPC?
what all could you possibly put into an HTPC?
So I had not, we had not looked at a Steiger Dynamics machine before, but they kind of focus on home theater designs, right, Ken? That's kind of their niche. They go after that. But I mean,
Like high-end home theater.
high end, yeah. Like if you look at this design, like this is it's actually hand brushed aluminum case. It's a custom made case, I think, essentially at that point, right?
Yeah.
If you're-
Yeah.
Rolled on the thighs of virgins?
exactly. Of course, all of the virgins.
The virgins were wearing steel wool, but
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable for them, but it's all
Yeah.
for the good of the product. It's a full size system, right? So it's a full size ATX motherboard,
Yep.
full size graphics card, full size power supply.
ATX case on its side.
It is
custom
essentially
case.
a 4U,
3U.
3U
think.
device, almost 4U, 6.85 inches tall.
Yeah. It's a pretty tall component. The drive on it is on its side, so you're slot loading
Yes.
a DVD or a Blu-ray
Right.
sideways.
So the specification of ours included an Asus Z97A motherboard, the Core i5-4690K, which is the
Devil's Canyon.
4-core.
Devil's Canyon 4-core non-hyper-threaded Devil's Canyon processor, 8 gigs of memory, 250 gig Samsung 840 EVO SSD with a Western Digital 3 terabyte red hard drive, and of course a GeForce GTX 980, which you can
Yes,
see
of course.
the power plug
Of course,
there.
you would need that to just play your movies on your.
But that's not what they targeted for, clearly.
That's true.
Right. So the idea, and I actually like this idea more, but coming from like the PC gaming side of things, like so. The ECS LIVA is like, hey, how can we make this cheapest possible thing that can also watch TV?
Yes,
Right?
and barely
maybe
do
record-
that.
And barely do that, right? and when you say barely do that, it's like because you got to bring in external USB storage or network storage and a network-based tuner card and all this other stuff. This doesn't have any of that complication. Everything can be stored internally.
Yep.
And what I think is more important is that this doubles as PC gaming on your TV as well as home theater PC. So, the home theater PC side is interesting in that it ships with a Ceton Infinity. Is that right?
That's a
Infinity cable card tuner.
Yep, cable card tuner with 4 tuners in it.
So you basically have this ugly looking thing, the PCMCIA card,
Which I had to go and drive to a store,
Not
a
a
branch
store.
of a cable
not a store.
provider to go get. It's basically a store.
Well, you got
like
a
an
whole
office.
sentence about how difficult it was to get that cable card set up.
Yeah, it was just their customer service. That was the only real roadblock. Because as far as Windows Media Center experience and everything, that was all painfully simple. Just check some EULAs and go through some simple process, put your zip code in.
The problem was having the customer service rep not know exactly what.
Yeah,
what
they were
doing.
clueless. They had like no idea what they were doing from the sounds of it.
My guess is every customer service rep went through like a day of cable card training in like 2011.
Maybe.
And they've rarely.
You
if
mean
ever
like a
used it.
half-hour cable card training?
Maybe if
And
that.
they
I
slept
think
through
it was
most of
just
it.
say no.
It was
don't
a
let them have
memo.
because it's a free cable.
It was a
box that they're
TPS.
not allowed.
It was a TPS report on their desk at some point. That's what it was. But the issue we had setting it up was just that there were 3 different numbers to provide them with from the Windows Media Center. It just gives you all the info from the card and the tuner and all that stuff. And their Time Warner for some reason in their system only had 2 blanks. So we had 3 numbers and 2 blanks for them to enter them into. So we
It's
had
not that
to-
many combinations. I'm going to be honest.
Once
with
they
you.
got the right combination, it was on within like 3 seconds of them hitting enter.
So
Like
it
a-
works.
Yeah.
And this did ship with Windows 8.1 with Windows Media Center.
Yep.
Installed, which if you already own Windows 8.1, Media Center is like a $30 add-on to it.
Is it 30? I thought
Yeah.
it was.
It's something.
I thought it was
It's like-
30. I don't know.
It's either 10 or 30. It's something. It's surprisingly cheap though, from what I thought.
It used
Yeah.
to be free, but whatever.
Used to be free.
So, but that all works fine. Like it's a
it's-
good experience with that.
It's very seamless. It's maybe a little too simple in some cases. Like I thought they could have put more stuff on the screen. There was too much buffer space around.
a lot of empty.
around the interface.
Call that negative space. Alan.
It really was negative space. Yeah.
Recording, playing back.
Yeah,
all that
everything worked
great.
just like
Yeah.
any decent DVR, and probably the most responsive you're ever going to get, especially running on
Yeah.
that system, right? Because it's got all that horsepower behind
Yep.
it. So, yeah, I mean, it was pretty snappy. The only time there were delays, it just seemed to be like the tuner was actually trying to tune the station. Like you were just kind of waiting on that to happen. That's really all it was. Like if you're just trying to channel surf and just hit, channel up repeatedly, it's not going to be as fast as. Maybe even some DVRs might actually be.
I don't know.
even
DirecTV
a
is
little-
pretty slow.
Yeah, cable boxes aren't
Yeah,
very
no.
fast
Yeah.
to begin with.
Cable boxes are pretty much the worst technology that exists.
Were
Yeah.
you able to tune in Tokyo though?
Tune in Tokyo. No, I did not try. No.
Aww.
Sorry.
Another one lost. There's so many potential benefits of having a computer be your
Yeah.
set-top box.
And-
right?
and even for the-
searchability and
Even for the media center stuff, there's other things you can tweaks you can do in the background and transcode your captured video streams to smaller formats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And with this system, you have a whole bunch of horsepower to do that.
Yep.
Right. Or to rip. I know Ken was trying Blu-ray ripping and transcoding and stuff on it, and plenty of horsepower for that too.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
horsepower, you can get storage on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of horsepower, I mean, the components in here we know very well.
Yeah, we know what they
exactly what to expect out of a GTX 980 and out of a 4690K. I think the benefit here is this is a device that it's a big device, but it looks nice. It fits well in kind of a home theater setup.
Yep.
You've already got connected to your TV. Like that's the whole purpose of the thing is it's outputting to your TV. So now you can use that GTX 90 for gaming.
Yep.
Right. So couch gaming, with a controller, with mouse and keyboard, whatever, I think becomes a really fun thing. So it turns out Steiger Dynamics is also the U.S. distributor of Couchmaster.
Hell yeah.
Which for those
bundle made in heaven.
if you don't know what the Couchmaster is, let me click this link here right for you. This is a premium device that basically has two big cushions on either side of your legs while you're sitting on a couch, and then a cross-platform here that holds your keyboard and your mouse and all that other good stuff. It comes with USB 3.0 extensions, so you've got it all sitting there. And you can go watch this sweet video of me sitting on this exact table demonstrating the Couchmaster as well. It's a pretty cool. It's actually a pretty neat device for people that want to game on their TV, like in their living room.
Yep.
As opposed to, it's an upgrade over the hospital tray method that I used years ago.
That's true.
Right.
Do they still not have a version 2.0 with a drink cup in it, though?
No, I don't understand that.
Yeah, you have to mod your Couchmaster.
You gotta mod the Couchmaster.
Level up your upholstery.
Pricing wise, the Steiger Dynamics Maven Core, it's expensive. It's like $29.50 or something.
$29.99.
Pretty close. $29.88. You want to try that one?
Okay. I don't think it'll have the same effect.
No.
$29.88.
Not the same rate.
You're right. It did lose a lot in that.
Yeah.
In that move. So Ken priced out similar components.
What it come to?
The only thing you couldn't get was the case, right?
Yeah.
Essentially identically. It's like $2,250 to $2,300. You're talking about a $700 price difference that you're paying
But
for installation,
It is an
warranty.
all aluminum.
It's a nice piece of hardware.
Case.
Scroll down to the other configuration I built.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So, for the Steiger Dynamics, like if you go there, you can, for $1,500, you can get this same case and everything.
Yeah.
Same system, but with a Core i5 3690, a
No,
GTX
sorry,
750
that's
Ti.
supposed to be 5960. I don't know where that came from.
Wait, 5960 would
Yeah.
not be a Core i5 part.
A7.
4960.
Something like
4690.
4690
non-K.
The same process. Okay.
The non-case.
The non-case.
So instead of a Core
That took
i5,
way too long.
it's a 4690, a GTX 750 Ti, and a 3 terabyte Western Digital Red without an SSD, I assume.
No, with an SSD. I think it was like a 120 gig Kingston.
And that's
Oh, really?
you can get that for $1,500
With that same case.
better.
with the same case.
No tuner, but you can add that on for like $200, I think.
Yeah, if you look for sales, you can find. I actually just bought because this reviewing this and bringing it to my house and trying it out kind of gave me the bug. So I just looked for a sale, and Newegg had a sale on the 6-tuner version of the Ceton.
I think that's all they
Infinity
sell
TV.
anymore.
Yeah,
I
the
think the 4
4-tuners
tuners is discontinued now.
Yeah, that's all you can get. But and supposedly that's kind of a workaround because Media Center supposedly doesn't support more than 4 tuners, but their driver somehow forces it to accept 6. I don't know.
Weird.
Yep.
I was reading that.
So that's Steiger Dynamics. Seems like a pretty nice company, high end. Like I was impressed with the presentation of the system and how it all
Yeah, it's
shipped
very
and how it
nicely
all
built,
looked. It's
you know.
Steiger.
Steiger.
I hope it's not Steiger because we've said Steiger in all of our videos and everything too.
True.
So, oops, wrong thing. Here we go. How about this? Josh, let's talk about consoles. We'd love to talk about consoles. A anonymous developer on Assassin's Creed Unity, which is coming out November 11th. It is on PC. It is an NVIDIA way it's meant to be played, GameWorks title. But
Sure.
it's also coming out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Basically, commented on the controversy around the fact that on the consoles, the game was only running at 1600 by 900 resolution.
Yep.
And that only running at 30 frames per second.
Yep. What about on PC?
On PC, I mean, it'll run it.
The usual,
It'll run
whatever you want.
multi-resolution
Okay.
and high frame rates, right? So, but the complaining was like, how come the PS4 couldn't run faster than the Xbox One? The PS4 has more compute hardware. This
Okay.
is a conspiracy theory because Microsoft is sponsoring, is one of the big promoters of Assassin's Creed, and so they were holding back, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care about that part. The part that's interesting is they say that this developer said that the game was too graphically powerful to run at 1080p on the consoles, that the Xbox One was very, very close in performance to the PS4, and that the Ubisoft team sees Unity as being, quote, crazily optimized for the architecture and consoles even as we approach the first year of the release, and that half of the CPU compute time is being used to help the rendering engine by unpacking and computing its kind of pre-baked global illumination stuff.
Okay.
Haven't you heard resolution is important?
It's not important.
Wait now.
And
No,
30
not
frames
at
per
all.
second is more cinematic. I know all of the reasons for it, but essentially what this developer is saying is that they have kind of already reached the peak of performance for these new consoles. And when you hear that, you would think, okay, we're not even a year into this console generation. It's
true.
It's probably crap, right? Because they've only had a year. But when you start to think about it, Xbox 360, well, let's take Xbox out. Xbox 360 was PowerPC. That was the triple core one, Josh. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, triple core, 2 threads per core.
And then PS3 was that cell architecture with
which is
an NVIDIA
Power
GPU.
8 based as
Yeah.
well. Well,
Yep.
Power PCs, the Power 7, I think.
And those were unknown entities, really, for the most part, for game developers as they came into that system. However, with the Xbox One and PS4, they're x86 cores.
Yep.
It's standard GCN graphics architecture from AMD that's been around for several years now.
Yep.
And it is not... It is completely feasible that game developers completely understand all this hardware already, and that it would seem likely that they would be able to peg these systems early. Josh, would you agree with that assessment?
Maybe I can pinch myself, I don't know, my face a little bit more. Do my best Renee Zellweger
Please.
impression.
Yes.
Yes and no. Yes, x86 is well known. GCN architecture is well known. The PS4 and Xbox One, their programming models do allow you to get a little closer to the metal than, say, a regular Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 machine. Having said that, there's still a lot of software development going on at both Sony and Microsoft that will improve performance and allow probably these designers to maybe dig in a little further. I know certainly not DirectX Next, but OpenGL Next,
Yep.
and the DX12, which the technologies of those will be going into the PS4 and probably Xbox One eventually. It would make sense to do it both because developers will get more tools. They'll be able to kind of experiment with different paths and get better performance out. I mean, there is going to be a learning curve, but I think we are hitting a lot of that early curve early. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, earlier. I mean, it's not like, the Xbox, even the original Xbox, if you look at the first games in the first year and compare it to the games at the end, I mean, it really was night and day. That they were able to extract more performance. And it was just, it was an Intel Celeron with a GeForce 4. But through software updates, better developer tools, low-level optimization by Microsoft, and we saw the same thing with the Xbox 360. Something else that we really need to kind of take with this is both Sony and Microsoft spent a lot of money to develop their own chips for the original Xbox 360 and the PS3. Cell didn't turn out to be nearly as good as Sony hoped, and they had to
Refrigerators.
yeah, they had to get NVIDIA to do the graphics portion. But if you look at the Xbox 360, that was the first parts out that had unified shaders. It wasn't incredibly powerful for the time. It was good, but they were able to really work with programming, the software, develop again, because the power architecture is not anything great. Yeah, it was running 3.2 gigahertz. Yeah, it was 3-core, 2 threads per core, but it was an in-order architecture. Didn't have a huge amount of cache, but it did have plenty of memory for the time and a relatively wide memory bus, plus the cache. So it could do some interesting things. Well, the eDRAM, rather, I'm talking about. But these are kind of off-the-shelf AMD parts. They spent significantly less developing them. They got them to market quicker at a lower cost. They just go into a royalty deal. They paid AMD some money to, utilize their licensed hardware, and they can get them out quickly.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to hit a point eventually where it's just going to flat bottom out, and there's nothing else they're going to do to make it look better, perform better.
Do you think that the Jaguar cores are a limiting factor here? Like we know about the stream units, and we know that they are not an architecturally limiting factor, except for the quantity of them there. Do you think it was a bad decision to use Jaguar cores as opposed to something less power efficient but more powerful?
Well, what did they have available at the time, and would AMD be willing to license out, say, for example, Trinity cores or Vishera? Mm-hmm. Go with a lower clocked version that can, steadily go at 2.6 or 2.8 gigahertz without TDP bank. Mm-hmm. But is AMD willing to do that? And plus, that would make it a significantly larger chip than what we have now.
Yep.
To get to 8 threads. So it's a big balance because things like Vishera, they don't run as well without that big L3 cache on the back.
True.
So
true.
What choices? It was just a manner of juggling, not the greatest choices to try to make the best compromise, and oftentimes when you compromise, you
I
have an
think
outcome.
When they first announced the specifications of the consoles a year before they were released, I think most of us kind of said, and most of the hardware media people that understood the architecture stuff said that seems like an undershot, right? Because if you're targeting a 7-year life cycle for hardware, with the Xbox One and especially the PlayStation 3, you aim high. Like you say, okay, we're going to give it more GPU horsepower, CPU horsepower than we think it needs today, or that they can use today, in hopes that they'll be able to take advantage of it over time. And I don't know. It feels like we're going to hit that wall quicker. According to this anonymous developer, that we are. Go ahead.
Something else that we have to consider is back then we were a whole lot more hopeful about multi-threaded software and how well that would work. And, if these developers just had more time, they'd be able to extract, more parallel code, and it's just going to run fast because you've got these 8 threads. And who cares if IPC is not that great? You got 8 of them going, plus you've got the GPU doing stuff. So it's going to be awesome. Well,
turns out that's more difficult, and IPC is still very important. As again, I think many of us would have recommended to them beforehand. So,
jeez, I remember the Pentium 4 making that argument. So it's not the instructions per clock that matters; it's the speed.
Everybody's got to have an argument, right? So, anyway, I think it's an interesting topic. It's not incredibly germane, I guess. The hardware is not going to change.
Yeah.
And it's just another reason to game on a PC, right? Where you can upgrade that crap if you want to. So check out that editorial if you would like. Let's run through some news items. Quick-ish. Broadwell-E expected 2016, Q1 2016. Jeremy, anything stand out here to you on this little leak from Chinese VR Zone? Because where else?
Well, because where else would it come from except for maybe video cards or Tweaktown? It's nice to see we still have very little information and very little reason to hope, because it's more than a year away. It's going to be nice to see. Intel is saying 140 watt TDP, which is pretty much bang on for what they're offering right now, which is a good thing. It means that we're still going to see some high-powered processors coming out of Intel. There's a good chance that if you buy an X99 right now, there will be a BIOS update that allows you to upgrade. Don't bet money on it, but it seems reasonable. But the one thing that Scott couldn't quite grasp and that I thought was a little bit weird was the integrated memory controller. So it's got 4 channels of DDR4 2400, 1 DIMM per channel.
Huh.
Which, in essence, sort of says you're going to have 4 DIMMs maximum.
Yeah.
You won't be able to pair up on them. Now, this could be a misspelling. This could be just the current version of it, because at least on the server side of it.
Can I throw in real quick?
But of course.
It could be like what Intel did some years ago when they're like, okay, these X59 motherboards, you can only have 4 DIMMs max. 4 of them. That's all we're going to support. And then the motherboard guys were like,
X58.
no.
X58.
Oh, sorry, X58.
Yeah.
X58
No, we
was
can do more.
Yeah, that's
we can
the triple
throw
channel.
8 on there. It's fine.
They
Works
it
fine.
was X58
They went
was
from 3
triple channel.
to 6 on X58. Yeah.
No, wait.
You're just all wrong.
Yeah. Nihilum.
What was the one after that? There was the first quad channel.
Oh.
X79.
X79?
Yeah.
Yeah, X79.
Yeah, the first boards for that were all
No.
4 DIMMs.
No, they weren't.
The first ones? I don't know.
Okay, the first specified boards were all 4 DIMMs, and then
I do
like
remember
Asus came out and said,
Intel
we
board
got 8
coming
on
out
these.
like that.
Look
Yeah.
what we can do.
And I mean, you've already got boards coming out with more than 4, so if a BIOS update is going to make this chip run, well, that kind of throws it out of your hands, doesn't it, Intel?
It's a little
Even though you
it's a
do
little
own the memory
disappointing.
controller now.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing that like this is more than a year away, and it's like 8 and 6 core options. It's like, well, okay, we got that today. 20 megs of cache. I think we got that today. Turbo Boost, got that. Hyper-threading, got that. K
40
SKUs,
PCI lanes,
got that.
got that.
40 PCI lanes, got that.
So what's actually updated then?
There'll be Broadwell architecture
Oh.
cores instead of Haswell.
Do you know what the best part about all that is? DMI. DMI.
Yeah,
is still
yeah,
there.
still a DMI
it's
connection.
Holding your I/O back, baby.
Hell yeah, buddy. That's what I'm looking forward to. So look forward to that in 2016.
Is that going to support those memory lock extension things that they had to pull out of?
I have no idea.
Oh.
Depends on how badly it screws up this generation, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
In good news, AMD has lowered prices of the R9 290X and R9 290, even though they won't say that they've lowered the prices of the 290X, and instead some partners are running channel specials.
Yeah.
They've lowered the prices of these parts.
So this is not channel specials. This is actually...
No, this is still channel specials.
Oh, okay.
This is still whatever crap they
So
want to say.
everybody's running a channel special then.
Not
Yes.
everybody, ironically. So when the 980 and 970 came out, they were aggressively priced. They kind of put AMD in a pinch.
Yep.
AMD reacted immediately with some minor price changes. They seem to have gone more aggressive now. As of let's double click this. As of the publication of this, which was on the 24th of October, you could buy an XFX Radeon 290X. 290X. Ugh, look at that. Now it's up to like 403. It's because the Amazon one's actually sold out. Newegg might still have them in stock,
You'll
but you
save
could buy.
$226? What?
Yeah, you could buy a 290X for $299 or $360 or $366. Right, those are the ones I found on Amazon that day.
Okay.
And that is, what did the 290X launch at? $549.
Yeah.
Is that right? I think something like that. But that's a significant price cut,
Yep.
especially considering where it was at. It was at $499 when the 980 launched, essentially. So you're looking at as much as $200 or about $150 price cut on multiple parts. And considering the GTX 980 still sells for $549 and up when you can find it in stock, which has been hard to do since their release, that's a $150. Or I'm sorry, that's a $250 potential hill that NVIDIA's parts has to climb in order to kind of make an argument about performance per dollar in any fashion. And then the R9 290 you could find for, I had at the time found for as low as $254 for a gigabyte WindForce, $275 for an MSI gaming, which then competes against the GTX 970 that sells for $329
Right.
when you can find it today. So now you're looking at $50, $80 difference.
So
price
maybe
difference there.
maybe those prices came back up a little bit because it's harder to get the 980 and 970s right now for this moment.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
My guess is if you go to Newegg, you will still find, actually here, let me go ahead and try this.
They're probably just riding the supply demand. you know.
Yeah, I mean the issue is with especially with Amazon, the prices are let's say they
Variable.
vary quickly because once Amazon sells out, they go to all the other resellers. And okay, well, Newegg's
What's Newegg's? Back up?
waiting for Newegg.com.
Oh.
So, in any event, I think you'll be able to find those cards for those prices. We had updated our leaderboard as well to include some of that, which again, because they're not, quote, price changes, they're channel promotions, that means that they can go up and down on a day-to-day basis, which also means
they're
that
going to have to go and change the price.
Yeah, which also means it's really crappy for the consumer, right? Because you could be, your buddy could get that card for $329 today, and for you it's going to be $430 on Amazon or Newegg that day.
If only there weren't 3 Bactrians that would help you out with that.
Yeah.
Camel.
Yeah, it's annoying. Let me see. Let me go to 290X here, and lowest price $334. Oh, well, that's open box. I don't count that crap. $349, $319 after a rebate. So that did go up a little bit, like $10, I guess, $10 or $20. So you can still get an XFX 290X for $349 on Newegg. You can get a Sapphire one for $359 on Newegg. You can get an MSI Gaming for $359 on Newegg, and those are all before rebate prices. So it's impressive stuff. AMD feels the need to react.
Yep.
To the aggressiveness of the 980, 970. I think maybe they wouldn't have promoted such aggressive channel promotions had they realized how long the 980 and 970 were going to be out of stock and kind of have shortage issues.
It's true.
But there you have it. If you're looking for new stuff, new graphics cards, if you want to buy an AMD graphics card, high-end card, now's the time.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive. Let's talk about some storage crap.
Yeah.
Samsung updates 840 EVO performance restoration tool. What do I care about that for?
So the initial version of the tool was 1.0. It did some kind of funky things when you had a drive that it couldn't update the firmware on. Updating the firmware is step 1 in the whole process, or actually step 0 if you consider how its GUI is laid out. Like it updates the firmware first, then it does you have to shut down the system to force the drive to reset, basically.
Okay.
When it when it reboots, the tool automatically relaunches and it goes through step 1, 2, 3 phase, right?
Sure.
If it couldn't update the firmware, it just stopped at 15%, gave you no anything. It just kind of stopped. It just silently failed,
Okay.
right?
So they've just updated that.
They updated that tool to just react differently when that situation happens, and also improve how it recognizes that you have an applicable model in your system. I guess they changed some things where it wasn't recognizing some drives.
No
right?
performance changes. No.
Nothing else changes.
It's
the same firmware. It flashes.
It's just better.
Yeah, it just works a little bit better.
Okay.
They also came out with. I'm not sure if we have a piece on this specifically, but they came out with the ISO DOS version of the tool.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's also out. Came out over the weekend, actually, like on Saturday or something like that. I think that's slipped into one of those various Samsung pieces that we.
I haven't had a chance,
about.
but can these do that if it's plugged in on a USB drive? Like if I've got a USB enclosure that the 840's in.
Probably not.
Can I run it?
I doubt it can update through that because it has
I'll
to
find
be.
it tomorrow, I guess.
It pretty much needs AHCI mode. Supposedly it can.
Okay.
It's supposed to be able to work in IDE compatible mode, but I had no luck doing that with the DOS version of the tool, of prior tools from them. It had to be in AHCI mode. So I suspect the same would be for this. But so that
this doesn't have USAP on it, so
yeah.
Because I'm deploying 2 of them tomorrow, and I kind of want to update the firmware.
Yep. Now remember that process that
Good idea.
Ryan and I were talking about maybe a week or 2 ago, saying how convoluted it would be if you had a RAID, right? Well, now that you have this ISO version, I've seen in forum posts that people have successfully they back up first, of course, but just reboot, take your motherboard out of RAID mode, just put it in AHCI mode, right? So you're not actually on purpose breaking your RAID, you're just making it so it can't see the RAID anymore, and it sees individual drives.
Yeah.
And then people have ran the tool on each drive individually, and it updated the drive. They said it took about a half an hour for each drive, although they didn't say how big those drives were, but probably the same amount of time it takes to use the Windows-based version of the tool anyway. It's just proportional to how much
Data is on.
how much data is actually on the drives that's
Right.
not trimmed, right? So it just they ran on each drive, and then they switched their motherboard back to RAID mode, and then booted back into Windows.
The key is to not boot into Windows when you turn AHCI.
Well, it won't. Nothing will happen. It just won't work.
If that's your
right?
primary. Yeah, gotcha.
So people are able to do that, and if you have a Mac, it should work as well. That's what the ISO is for in the first place, is to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
So you should be pretty much covered now. Some people were griping that they thought the tool was a different version for the ISO version, but it doesn't really matter. It's a DOS-based tool. There's no GUI stuff to fix.
Right.
So you're good. So there's that.
Mm.
And then there's more stories.
What about the apparently the German Samsung acknowledged that the 840 basic or the 840 plain or whatever you want to call
just
it
the 840
has the same performance slowdown issues.
Yes, we as a
Uns
site.
ist durch das Feedback,
Yes.
das direkt hat. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
just
gonna
stop
that
right
now.
there. One of our commenters was kind enough to translate for us because the Google Translate and stuff was not really legible. So
They basically say that, hey, because of feedback, we realized that the 840 has the same problem.
Yeah.
For the moment, we are systematically examining the units with different system environments and working on a solution as fast as possible.
Yep, which is very similar to what they said about the 840 EVO when
Yeah.
they finally acknowledged that, right?
But then they do spell out, due to different technologies, the Pro Series are not affected,
Which
which
we've
is
been saying the
exactly
whole
what we
time.
knew before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what it really boils down to is TLC, yes, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's TLC, then and MLC, no, right? That's pretty much what the issue is.
Right.
At the end of that article, we kind of point something out though. There's a bunch of other TLC versions of Samsung SSDs.
Right.
Okay, like PM841, PM851, 845 data center version, right? The PM843, which is slightly older, and the PM853T.
None of those mean anything to me. Where
they're all
was
different.
that?
They're like OEM versions of SKUs or
okay.
like data center parts, stuff like that, right? Haven't heard anything about those, but I don't think those would necessarily have been tested in that situation where you're just leaving stuff on them for a long time, right? Who's going to leave stale data for 2-3 months on a data center SSD? Chances are they're not. Or it's going to be in a RAID where even if there was a slowdown, you might not even notice it initially because there's so many drives in parallel.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So yeah, there's that. And then there was, as the term you used earlier today, a regression, possibly. Some people were reporting that there was this unused reserve block count number in their smart data that was showing up as failed after they did the update to the most recent firmware. And that was a bug that we saw in the pre-release versions of the drives that was actually fixed in the initial shipping firmware. So it's a bug that has reappeared the exact same way that it appeared a way long time ago. And it's happening.
But it doesn't affect anybody's performance. It doesn't affect stability. It doesn't affect anything.
No, it doesn't
It's
affect any of
just
that. It
Something
just-
that shows up in smart data.
Yeah, but it might make Magician throw a flag, like a very annoying, hey, your drive is about to fail, or
Right.
stuff like that, right? Which not really the intended way you want your SSD to work by constantly crying wolf when it's not really.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. So that's might be an issue. If that happens to anybody that's updated, I would suggest you just go through Samsung support, and they'll probably just RMA it for you, I would imagine. Just a hunch, because there's no other way to fix that, as far as I know. So if it's happened to you, I don't know, unless they make another version of the performance restoration tool with a different firmware, I don't know. Probably.
All
not.
right, and our last Samsung trifecta story is rumors of the 850 EVO taking hold again, thanks to leaked photos and specs and pricing on Fries.com. Everybody's go-to source for PC hardware news. Fries.com.
Well, actually, it was the Fries.com thing led us to do some other Googling of, part numbers and SKUs and stuff like that, which then led us to other sites that had, say, all 4 capacities of it. The fact that there will be 4 capacities instead of 5, right? There was a 750 gig 840 EVO.
There
if
does
you
not
recall.
appear to be one here.
There's not one here, which makes sense because that probably wasn't a very popular capacity anyway, right? It wasn't.
It's my favorite. I don't
No,
know. I
no.
just made that up. I don't know.
So there you have it. There they are all laid out for you with what the prices were. I'm not sure if those sites are still up, but
Yeah,
hey,
or
there's
if
the
these prices are accurate, right? I mean, 1 terabyte for $477. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good starting point if that turns out to be true.
Yeah, it does get more expensive per gig as you get to the smaller models, obviously, which is kind of par for the course, right? Because you have to pay for the
Seems still on
enclosure and
fries.
the controller and stuff like that.
Still on fries. 1 terabyte. Samsung 850 EVO. Add to cart. And it says ships by Monday, November 24th. We have no idea if that's accurate.
Yeah, and it initially said November 3rd.
Yeah.
And then it changed. So that's all we have to go on.
Because
Really.
the 850 Pro is $600 right now on Newegg.
Yeah, and they're able
It's
to
not a
get.
bad price at all.
That's true. That is actually lower. It was running 70 cents a gig. Now it's 60 cents a gig.
Okay.
So that's an improvement, right?
Yeah.
And actually, that's puts it pretty close to 50 cents a gig. Like, 70 is kind of like, wow, that's a lot per gig, right? But 60 is kind of like, given that the Pro performs pretty damn good. I mean, it's...
Yeah, is this selling for 20 cents a gig?
No, I would like it to. It's not there yet. It's not, Yeah, it's not at your magic number yet.
So we don't have units of this. We don't have reviews of this. This is again still just rumors. We assume this is going to happen. The picture here is of a different color scheme than we've ever seen before on the Samsung SSD.
Black with a gray square.
So somebody either did some Photoshop work or somebody
or it might be a picture.
Screwed up.
Might be a picture of the 850 Pro, which has a red square just in black and white. I don't know. Could be.
Could sure.
Looks
Why
like a
not?
black and white picture.
850 grayscale edition.
Yeah,
Should.
maybe.
Should not. All right. Anyway, let's move on. GTX 970s.
Yeah.
Graphics cards.
Uh-huh.
Coil Whine.
They do that.
It sucks.
It does suck.
So there have been concerns about possible high frequencies of occurrences, rather high occurrences of coil whine, noticeable coil whine in GTX 970s, and I understand the irony of using the term frequencies.
Yes.
Thank you.
If you're the kind of person that can hear the flyback transformer in a old television, really high pitched kind of, you hear it. It tends to echo off
I
the
can do
stuff
that.
in the room.
Yeah.
Ryan can hear that. I can hear that. Then you probably would hear this sound. It's very similar.
Right, but I mean, so what's happening is essentially that's kind of normal stuff. There are cases where coil whine is louder and much more noticeable, even when a graphics card's inside a case, and fans are spinning or whatever.
Because that sound is different than any other sound that the PC would normally be making.
It sounds like there's a very small leak in a steam pipe.
Yeah.
It just is that high pitch whistle that you can hear for like 3 miles.
Yep.
And half the time, it's not that you notice it. It's just, why am I in a crappy mood? Why do I have a bit of a headache going on?
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh.
And those kinds of sounds, sometimes they're very hard to directionalize. Like,
they are.
You really can't.
It's like bass.
Where is this coming from?
Super low frequency versus super high frequency.
Yeah.
So basically, what there are forum threads and there are discussions happening at various websites about, hey, is this a problem with the GTX 970? There seem to be a lot of reports of this happening with the GTX 970. And I honestly don't know if this is a wide scale problem or not, or if just the people that have bought 970s are more vocal about it than
people
other
that bought 980s.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Little behind the scenes knowledge I don't think I published. Maybe they don't want me to say. The 980 reference design built by NVIDIA and qualified by NVIDIA.
Yep.
Doesn't have this issue.
And calls for specific parts, I would imagine, for the
It's a reference
coils.
design. They sell them the whole board.
Oh, with the parts on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. They basically they have them manufactured and sell them to partners.
Okay.
Right now, there are some partners out there that have custom 980s already as well, but it is a higher end card, higher wattage. They tend to not skimp on component selection.
Okay.
Right.
970
With
has
the
a lower
970s,
wattage.
nobody used NVIDIA's reference design that I know of.
Yeah, we haven't seen a reference 970.
No. And as a result, everybody used custom designs. And what can happen, I'm not saying this is 100% the case, but what can happen is,
If you have
AIC vendor says, well, okay, we're trying to save a little bit of money. Let's go with that inductor and that inductor instead of these two that are higher priced.
just choosing different parts.
And as a result, you get some vibration issues and you get coil whine that you wouldn't normally otherwise get. Like the fix to it is hot glue. But these are enclosed
inside the
inductors.
plastic. Yeah. So
So don't do that.
Like a high grade inductive or high grade inductor would be. It's inside a little kind of a plastic box thing.
Yeah,
But it's
it looks
basically
like this.
Yeah, it's just a metal coil,
Yep.
that's inside that box, right?
Yep.
It's packaged in the box so it could be surface mountable, right? Just so it has pads on either side of it, right? And then the high grade ones will just have like epoxy, like they put the winding
Just
in there,
fill it up.
and then it's filled with epoxy during manufacture. But they're much cheaper to have just hollow, like no epoxy, but with just the coil in there. And if you have the free floating coil, you're inducing current into it. It has like a magnetic effect going on. Now it's trying to move
It vibrates.
and vibrate.
Yep.
And you might hear it, right?
And
That's the
so
thing.
some people are doing that, and we have quotes here from MSI, EVGA, and NVIDIA. EVGA kind of publicly acknowledged it. So yeah, some of our 970s have it. If you have that issue, RMA it. We're getting you a new one. Doesn't worry about it. And we have already made a change
to what inductors they're using.
Into the part that is going to solve the issue.
Yep.
MSI is a little bit more vague about it. If you have a concern, contact our RMA department. As far as I can tell, based on my conversations with MSI and NVIDIA, MSI will be RMAing all of those cards as well if people are complaining about it. And NVIDIA, basically for their part, says, we're actively looking into it. Right? So...
Well, it's the interesting thing because we always talk about like the military class components that these guys brag
Yeah.
about on the motherboards. I mean, ASUS, they use those the chokes and the coils.
Yeah.
Where they have the magnetic, the ferrite in the middle, and
Ferrite
then
core
the coil,
chokes,
and
yeah.
they actually compress this stuff until it's really just packed solid. It's not epoxy.
Right.
It's actually a compressed material around that, so they don't have those problems.
Yeah. Because that will not
But
move.
they're
So
expensive.
yes, they're expensive, and so they put them on $400 motherboards and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So basically, we're kind of like an exploratory time. And I do want to point out something. Some people in the comments to this news post have said, when I start up Unigen, I hear it, but it goes away when I'm playing.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand, like, if you have an unlocked frame rate and you're running a high performance game at like a loading screen and you hear coil whine, but you don't hear it while you're actually playing the game,
Right.
that's not a problem. That's going to be there with almost any card, no matter what quality you have.
Even with the better coils?
Yeah.
So that wine might be coming from something else?
Well, so say for example, which game is it in the Skyrim
Like the loading
menu?
screen or something?
If you
or-
have
yeah.
VSync manually disabled in INI files, whatever, like you're running at 4,000 to 5,000 frames per second. Okay.
I was thinking of StarCraft 2 does that as well.
Yeah, and so that kind of agitation of that stuff is
Yeah.
way more impactful than when you're running at 100 or even 200 frames per second.
It's conceivable
Right.
that
And
sound
that-
might come from something else on the board.
It could. It could.
Yeah.
And the coil whine issue is always interesting to me because it fluctuates based on GPU load, right?
Yep.
Because the amount of power going into the inductors is doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you go into there and you say, okay, I hear it when I run Furmark and I hear it when I do I'm at the loading screen for Civ Beyond Earth. That does it really badly as well.
Yep.
And that happened, like, basically when I was doing my benchmarking, it happened on the 980s. It happened on the R9 290Xs.
Oh, on the
really
980s.
high quality ones.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And that happened on parts that I know are good. What I'm more concerned about is if you're an owner of a 970 or whatever, and it happens like while you're playing a game
Yeah.
at a reasonable frame
Yeah.
rate.
Times other than the loading screen kind
Those
of
are the ones you need to be concerned about. So I do have a little poll here on that news post that asks if you are a GTX 970 owner, do you own one with no issues? Or if you own one with issues, what vendor is it?
Yep.
Asus, EVGA, Galax, Gigabyte, MSI, PNY, Zotac, etc. Just trying to get an idea of kind of how widespread it is, and then leave us some comments here as well to
Yep.
kind of...
For the record, there are some SSDs that give me a little bit of coil whine at certain loads.
Oh, really?
But it's a much smaller coil, and there's only one of them. You know,
Yeah.
you can still hear it, though.
If you got tinnitus, then it's like you got a friend in the room.
Get those knee braces with copper in them.
Yeah.
Okay. More
No,
stuff.
tinnitus. That's a hearing thing.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Not tendinitis. Brian.
Haha, yes.
Real
gotcha.
close.
Yep.
Real close.
It's pretty close.
Swing and
Yeah.
a miss.
Jeremy, tell me about the graphics amplifier because it sounds awesome.
Well, it really kind of is. We've been waiting for this for a while. We've been waiting for this since PCI Express came out, and we said, you could do an external graphics enclosure, couldn't you?
They did
And a
that
couple-
through PCI and AGP.
They
Well,
did.
In the 90s.
It was bad, but they did.
It was
Bad.
awful. It was
AGT.
just sad.
So what is this? What is this device we're looking at?
Okay, so this is a $300 device that you can get. Not alone. You have to buy the Alienware 13.
Well, sure,
and
why
I
not?
hope that some of the higher end also offer this as a choice. But it's an empty box with 460 watt PSU inside of it, and
So then
a
it's not
PCI
empty.
Express slot. This PCI Express slot can accept any double-sized card, so 2 slots or smaller.
Yep.
And up to 375 watts. Again, not an issue. That's a PCI Express thing. And you can then toggle a switch on your laptop, tell it, I want external graphics, do a reboot, plug it in with a single cord, which is a combo PCI Express and USB, because they made it a 4-port USB hub too, just because. And also, I'm sure that some communication goes over the USB channels.
All right.
Reboot it, and whatever desktop class GPU you want is now running the internal display on that laptop.
It
and
sounds amazing.
can also do the external ones through the laptop, not through the card itself.
How many lanes do you get? Like PCIe what?
16?
By 3? Or 3.0? Sorry.
It's claimed as 3.0,
Wow.
and no reason it couldn't be either.
Well, because you're going a little bit of length there over a cable. Like,
Yeah,
Well,
you got to
the
lick the
rating
cable
is-
and see how hot it is.
just
Why
grab
do you
it.
think
Just
it's in
hold
a
on to
giant
it.
case?
I think this is awesome. I also
Yeah.
think we'll never ever see it, because every time I see this stuff, Thunderbolt was like, oh man, Thunderbolt, we're finally at the age of external graphics adapters. And
well, I mean, if you
the-
really,
the only reason I think this might actually come out and sell is because it is one vendor selling it to work with one laptop.
yeah,
Exactly.
Like they're going to sell it as a bundle. I think the USB ports are cool on it because now you just have your external keyboard and mouse.
yeah, that's
hooked up
your
to it.
dock cable. You
Yeah.
just plug that in, and now, yeah. I can see that's exactly why they did it.
I also would maybe consider
And you can upgrade
the
your
idea
graphics
of
card.
having probably the loudest component of a PC sitting on your desk.
Yeah, how
right
long is
next
that
to you.
cable? So like, will it reach to like the floor under the PC?
I don't.
I did not see a rating on it in the Gizmodo review, but
It's
I'm
probably
guessing
not a long cable.
like a foot and a half max.
Well, it looks a little bit longer than that here, but yeah, it doesn't look very long. And I would imagine for signal integrity issues that it
like
probably
I think you could probably you probably get 1 meter out of something like that at the most, just like 3 feet.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this.
What is the? Is the laptop like a decent gaming laptop off to the
It's a
side?
13-incher, so you are limited a little bit. But again, an i5 4210U, frankly, is, except for some games which are going to be CPU limited, this is going to be fine for a couple of years.
But what is the
you can go
graphics of?
Sorry?
You get to add your own graphics card.
No, no, no.
It doesn't matter what graphics is in there already.
No. Assuming is it a gaming laptop on its own, or do you have to have it docked?
Well,
for
on
it
its
to-
own, what you've got is an i5 4210U, either 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, DDR3 1600, GTX 860M.
Okay.
Not great,
So
not
an
bad.
860M. Yeah,
and
that's-
you can go for either a 500 gig 1 terabyte hard drive or a 256 gig M.2 SSD. So the shell itself is not that horrible.
Yeah.
It's not brilliant, but you can plug whatever generation GPU you want into
Oh,
it.
absolutely, yeah.
So when a next generation GPU comes out, you're not tossing this $1,000, $2,000 laptop out. You're just plugging in a different card to the external port.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's
Yeah,
always
it's not bad.
awesome. Every time I hear about it, it's always awesome.
But then it turns out to be too expensive.
What have
and
the
kind
cat-
of buggy,
yeah,
and
what have
nobody
the
supports
catches-
it.
They don't come out.
Well, right, but like for this one, yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about support or not. Like that would work. It's just a
Driver
straight-
support.
But this wouldn't have a special driver.
Well,
Neither should Thunderbolt technically.
making
Right.
Windows route the display output back, like you're for that GPU, you're supposed to be plugged into the display output on the back. You're not. That is a driver issue.
For this setup specifically, you're talking
Yes.
about?
For any external
this
GPU
will
on a
be a
laptop.
driver thing.
I would imagine that this would not appear any different than a standard system
It
with
doesn't
that
appear
card.
different, but it's using the display inside the monitor or inside the laptop. yet you're not running a display cable back from the graphics card to the laptop.
How is it going back?
Exactly.
I don't think it rolls back to the laptop, does it?
It
does.
No.
Yeah, it does.
You can do both. You can do either, I think.
That is the
But
difficult
it
part
has
to
to
solve.
support,
Right?
up that.
And
so.
we're talking about the company that for a little while figured out a way to get one graphics card to draw the top half of your screen and the other graphics card to draw the bottom half of your
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
They're not scared to try and
originally.
figure out a proprietary solution.
That didn't work. That, to be fair, that didn't work either.
But I think
No,
the
it
only
didn't work so well either.
I think the only driver-dependent oddball kind of thing would be that feedback thing. So
that is the reason we've been given as to why these Thunderbolt GPU docks haven't
Yeah,
ever
because
come out.
this is literally
Have never
no
come out.
different than the Thunderbolt GPU docks.
what if you ran this?
It's more bandwidth.
No. What if you ran this system with your just standard desktop display plugged into the side box, and you didn't use the display on the
Should
laptop?
be fun,
I think you have to plug it into display outputs on the laptop.
Yes.
regardless.
Yeah. It might be
okay.
using
That
some
card no
offshoot of like
longer-
Optimus and sending the display buffer back over.
That
Like
makes
if you
PCIe.
zip over to the Gizmodo review that I linked to, you can
rather
see
not.
it with the enclosure off.
that's probably what's going to
And
break
yeah,
it and
like
make
the
it
card
not
is plugged
good.
in, but it's not interfacing directly.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
interfacing through. Scroll down a bit of the way.
Hold on, I'm waiting for it all to load. Okay, here we go.
Yep, he plugs it in.
Look at that GIF.
Oh yeah.
So see, it's not plugged into the card.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay. Huh. All right.
So there is a little bit of trickery going on in there, but at the same time, it also means it's not dedicated to a certain card. It may just be an external dock driver that you add.
I wonder if you can
And
put an
then
AMD card in it.
I would guess not. I would guess that it would be like there's some Optimus
yeah.
driver, there's some thing that NVIDIA is going to be able to custom build into it to
Because
to
MSI
make
announced a
that
laptop
compatible.
like this a couple of weeks ago as well.
Did they?
Yeah. So maybe it's a thing that NVIDIA is starting to kind of push on the back end unofficially.
I kinda
we
wish-
can do this now. Do it.
I kind of wish they would go the route of just only extend the PCIe. Don't worry about return video. Just make it so it's a pure docking kind of thing where you have a desktop display plugged into the card. Then you wouldn't have to worry about any stuff like that, right? It would just be a right, just like any other desktop PC with a PCIe.
I would imagine that there's some reason why they wouldn't do that.
Well, and if you want even more, and sorry, Pelly, but guess what? PhysX doesn't work when you use this card either.
Oh.
I don't care.
Nobody does, but
I can't use my 860M as a physics accelerator in my 980.
no, you cannot.
Nice.
They tried.
All right, so I'm gonna ask some people about this and figure out more crap. Alan, LiteOn M.2 PCIe SSD.
Yeah. I hadn't really seen many enterprise grade, air quotes there, M.2 SSDs, but this appears to be one, all the way down to having a capacitor bank on it so it can have power loss protection. So they came out. Well, it's not really out yet. Like they don't actually have active power consumption numbers published on that spec sheet we're looking at there right now. So it's supposed to launch during
TBD.
Yeah, it's supposed to launch during Dell World, which is next week. But it's basically an enterprise grade M.2 PCIe by 4.
What would I use
3.0?
this for?
If you were to have a bunch of them in a server somehow. I don't know of any server chassis that can handle it
Are
properly.
there riser cards that have a lot of M.2 slots on
I
them or
don't
something that
know.
pass through
I don't
to-
know. The only stuff I've seen coming is more for the like extending it out different ways, not to fan out to multiple M.2 ports. But really, it's just if you had that many lanes of PCIe, it's just a matter of having some form of a card that can, connect to 4 lanes for each M.2
We're looking
device,
at
right?
2 different models. Highest performance 1.5 gigabytes per second sequential read, 1.2 gigabytes per second sequential write.
Yep. The other piece of info that was missing from that whole spec sheet PDF thing that we got from them was if it supports NVMe or if it's using. So that's kind of
Yeah.
a question mark, because you figure if it was NVMe, they would at least state that one time in
Yeah.
their documentation, because that is a big boost, right? At the fact that you're using lower CPU load per IO.
See, look, somebody asked NVMe.
Yeah, somebody
Well,
did ask.
If we look at one of the parent company of LiteOn, which is Plextor, right?
Yeah.
And that they have a very similar looking device, not enterprise grade.
They do. It does do much lower I/O than this. So this appears to be like probably some form of different controller.
That's cool.
Yeah. Just on paper, this seems to outperform, like, run circles around the Plextor M6E, which would be the, M.2 version of the Plextor consumer drive.
All right.
Yep.
Josh, anything interesting about ARM announcing Mali T800s, or is just better, more efficient?
Wasn't that a Terminator?
No, T1000.
I thought that was an 800.
I don't think so.
Wasn't it the T200 was first?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what Arnold was.
There's not a whole lot. I think it's support up to OpenGL ES 3.1.
Correct.
It's you can have a multiple amount of their cores on there. I think it's like 16 streaming units per core, and you can have upwards of 16 cores.
Yep.
So 16 times 16? That's 1 or 2 cores. I imagine that's not going to be in a phone, but somebody will try something and everything. So it goes from the T800 up to the T860.
Yep.
T860 is obviously the highest end model. It can have the most cores, but again, it is entirely configurable to the needs of the people licensing the technology. So they can call it a T860, but you can still have a interesting amount of cores in there, not just the maximum.
You can kind of go between any of the SKUs that they actually offer. I think they have 860, 830, and 820 kind of predetermined, but yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
So it's nice that they have new products. The Mollies are a lot better than they used to be. So you can actually play games and stuff on them, and they're DX9 compatible, DX11. So have fun.
We'll see more. We'll have to wait until 2016 apparently to see devices based on that. So that's 2 products that we've talked about today that we won't talk about again until 2016. We'll probably talk about them again, but whatever. Our last storage thing of the night, Connected Data announces Transporter Genesis Private Cloud Appliance, which is a fancy way of saying Drobo has a Dropbox technology.
Yeah. Transporter was a separate company that started off to the side of Drobo by the same people that started Drobo, who had left, and then they came back, and then they kind of merged the two together. And so basically you have, actually the thing on the screen right now resembles nothing like any of the Drobo products. So it seems like they're kind of developing even more advanced stuff. So there is a rack mount Drobo thing, but that's nothing like this. This is a full 2U, looks like a full depth chassis, and it supports up to 24 terabytes of storage, and actually is a Xeon system with like 32 gig of RAM, and it's basically like a full blown.
That seems confusing to me.
What?
That it would need that much compute power to do cloud storage.
Um,
Because the Drobo itself could have support for that much storage, but doesn't need that much compute.
True.
Even for its weird not RAID thing that it does.
But if it was software based, wouldn't it scale better with IOPS with more CPU horsepower?
Yeah, that was the thing that was limiting to, like, the Drobos were only doing just storage, and they kind of get bogged down when they get full of a bunch of small files and stuff like that, right? Even the Drobo Pro, which was like one of the faster ones. So this is definitely like a beast of a workhorse, and they're designed to be scalable, so you could put multiple of them at one site, right? And just get, more than 24 terabytes, right? 48 terabytes, whatnot. And then they actually have a whole line where they also launched other devices, things that look strangely like a Drobo Pro style device, or
Transporter
a
15 or 5.
or a Drobo 5-bay model kind of device there, right? Just rebadged as Transporter. Probably have different guts, probably doing different things, right? Probably upgraded CPUs to be able to handle the Transporter related stuff. But essentially, it is a cloud-based device. It has sort of a reach through the Transporter service, right? They provide just a permanent service that kind of connects all of those devices, gives you the means of getting to the other device, right? And they have the whole round of stuff you would expect, like for a cloud thing. They have iOS apps, Android apps, that sort of thing. Desktop app you install on your system. You can selectively sync whatever folders you want. The kind of cooler thing I like about their software is that there is a separate subfolder within your set of folders that you are sharing and syncing. And if you go into that folder, you see the entire device. You see everything stored only on the device and
Slower
not syncing.
access because it's not actually synced locally to your machine.
Yeah, you're pulling
but
it
you still
over the
have
net.
access
Yeah, you're
to
pulling it over the
Okay.
net or over your LAN, depending on like if it's on your network,
Gotcha.
right? But it shows up as if it was the file system. In other words, through Finder or Windows Explorer, you
It'd
just
be neat to
browse
try.
to it.
Yeah.
Just, it's kind of an elegant thing. It's not super fast. The one I tested so far, I've been playing around with just this very small single drive transporter, which is the lowest one you can get. Actually, the smallest one. It's not, it's not super fast. We probably get better results over Samba, but you can actually turn Samba on the single drive transporter.
Oh,
You can. I haven't done like speed tests, but I don't know. Probably
Worth a shot.
preferred to use their desktop app and use it the way it's meant to be.
I was
instead
gonna say
of trying
it'd be a good test case for us here with all of our remote use and everything too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And looks like last but not least, if you're looking for hope for future improvements for processor performance, look no further than the Haswell-EX in the second quarter of 2015. So now we're only the next year as opposed to the next year.
Yeah.
And you can look to find the Xeon E7 V2 line of processors that will have, what is this, up to how many cores? 18? 18 cores?
Are those hyper-threaded?
36 simultaneous threads with hyperthreading.
That's awesome. I like how the lighting on that die shot just happened to tend towards red to make it look kind of representative of the part cooking with that many cores going.
yeah.
And I think the E7 support 8 processors.
Oh, so you can put 8 CPUs in a system.
Yeah.
So 8
Yeah.
times 18. That's
18
also
core.
that's also 1 or 2, I think, Josh.
Well,
that's many cores.
what,
Oh, wait.
what's the Windows limit for threads for like one compute unit?
If you
96
use
was it?
72.
well, it depends on what if you'd have to use like a 2012 R2 data center edition or something to get more than
No.
No,
No?
there's a hard limit on what the Windows considers a pool of compute resources. I think it's
okay.
64 or 72.
Yeah.
Because when I was doing the Haswell-E,
5.
yeah, the E5, when I went out to that Xeon server day, like they would literally, like some of the servers had so many cores they were disabling hyperthreading because Windows wouldn't actually use that in the performance
see it
tests
all?
that they were using anyway. It sees them all, but it will only one task can only be distributed amongst one pool at a time. So it's kind of interesting. Other than gigantic size, they're fairly similar to other Xeon E5 processors. You can pick up to an 8-socket motherboard and load it up with multiples of these. So,
For dirt cheap,
Damn.
bargain basement prices.
oh yeah, no, they're probably $300 a piece.
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
oh yeah,
$299.
buy
How much,
two.
Josh?
$299.
Okay, all right, that's good enough. All right, let's get into our hardware software picks of the week. My pick is this little device right here. This is the RAV Power wireless charger charging pad, Qi enabled. That's spelled QI for some dumb reason. Qi is the kind of I don't know if it's not a standard, but it is probably the biggest standard for wireless charging at this
Most
point.
accepted,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
This is essentially just an external battery. It's got a USB port to charge, a USB port to connect your phone to, but maybe more importantly, what it does is it has this little circle on the top, and it will do wireless charging with Qi capable devices. The Moto 360, I've actually had this for quite some time. It's $25 on Amazon, and it is a 4,800 milliamp hour total battery capacity. But essentially, what you get here is when you just lay it on there. Oh, I gotta turn it on. There we
Yeah,
go.
turn it on.
And you heard it beep, and now my Moto 360 is charging. So what's interesting about that is as more and more devices start to go to the world of wireless charging, that will be more and more useful. For example, the Nexus 6, the Droid Turbo, the Galaxy Note 4, they all use Qi wireless charging by default. You don't have to change backplates or anything weird. You can still charge them through USB, those phones.
And
not
you can
the
charge
watch.
much faster through USB.
Yes, yeah. The charging rate on this is slower.
Yeah.
But the idea for me is like,
For the watch, it probably charges. That's as fast as you could charge
the
it
watch
anyway.
charges incredibly fast.
Yeah.
It's such a small battery.
Yep.
But the convenience of especially overnight when you're not in a hurry, just having that on your nightstand and just setting it on it and going to bed and not worrying about it is pretty cool. So having this with you if you travel or something and you set your watch on, because you can actually charge two things. You can set your watch on it and plug in your phone.
Well, do it while it's plugged into something to charge itself. Curious.
I don't know the answer.
That's
to
your typical overnight scenario, right? You'd plug that in. You traveled with that.
yeah.
While your watch.
I don't know
on
if it'll do that. So for me, what this would be is I'm going to go out of town for one night. So I'm
Yeah,
just
just
going to
bring-
take this with
yeah,
me.
just bring it
and
with
it
you.
will charge my phone and my watch while I sleep type
Yeah.
of thing. So that is RAV Power wireless charging. Nexus 5 7 4. Yeah, it lists Galaxy S5. It says S4. I don't remember the S4 having.
You could buy a wireless backplate. Backplate
It was
for
just
it.
a different
A lot
backplate.
of
Yeah, it was an add-on.
If you have a popular phone that has a removable backplate, you can most likely buy a Qi capable
Okay.
thing for it.
So pretty nifty little stuff there. Its output is 5 volt, 1 amp max.
over Qi.
It doesn't say. It just says maximum output.
Qi's probably less than an amp.
I think it's 500 milliamps.
Yeah, I would probably say that.
That's decent. Decent for wireless.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
Just don't try and run a LIVA over it.
it's the future.
Waldo would be proud.
It's the future. Jeremy, what do you got
Wireless electricity.
Well, for those poor souls that don't watch this show live, I must quickly make a correction. It appears that now that Alienware has fixed the link, they did indeed benchmark a 290 on the external graphics card enclosure.
for me? Okay.
So it is
Good
not
plan.
just NVIDIA only.
All right, cool.
But apart from that, I've got this handy little project which uses both Google Translate and Microsoft App Store and a Raspberry Pi. But that's it. And you can build yourself a universal translator right off of the Raspberry Pi. You can do over 1,000 language pairs with it. It's a little limited because you're plugging it into a headset and then using the Raspberry Pi as a translator. You will need an input device attached to it because there is a keystroke command that you need to do. And, well, it's free, so it only does 50 a day because the Google API limits you to 50. But apart from that, as long as you got a network connection, this thing will listen to anything that is spoken into the microphone that you've got and translate from one language to another.
On the fly.
On the fly, yeah. Like I say, you got to send a command to it to upload that to the Google Talk, which then sticks it over to the Microsoft Translate, and then back again to play in your ear. But literally on the fly for the price of a Raspberry Pi. This is ridiculously cheap and just something that, if you're just a little bit interested in programming and want to get into it, or you got a kid that's a little bit interested in programming and wants to get into it and wants to see something really impressive, this seems like an awesome thing. And honestly, reading through the steps, this isn't even an afternoon's work.
And you wouldn't have to run it on a Pi, right?
No, you don't. This particular one, all the source code is already there for you. You don't have to write a damn thing.
You can just
But
run
you
on
could
any
do this
Linux
on many
distro?
things.
Is that what you're saying, Ken?
Probably.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Josh, what do you got?
I've enjoyed my Grado headphones throughout the years, but the one complaint that I knew about myself and have heard about pretty much ad nauseum is how uncomfortable the ear pads are. The SR125s were in that group that just were not comfortable. You really had to toughen up your ears to wear them for a long time. Otherwise,
How does
it
one
just was
toughen up
grim.
their ear? You just like,
Ear calluses.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just ask any woman
Nope.
who has
Whoa.
nursed how
Nope.
they toughen things up.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not
Okay,
sucking
anyway,
on your ears.
for $10, you can get these nice, soft pads that you can quickly put on,
Quickly.
and yes, relatively quickly. It takes you less than 3 minutes.
It's like they should ship the really uncomfortable headphones with some nice ear covers.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think that these do block a little bit of sound as compared to the standard ones, but boy, it's a lot nicer on your ears, and for only $10.
Proudly made in Brooklyn, USA. I don't know
Proudly,
what that is, but
which same as these
Do they have
that I just
Ebola?
got today. What?
USA.
Do they have Ebola then?
They
Yes.
do not.
They come with
yet.
Ebola.
Cool.
That
good.
costs extra.
Good for you.
Thanks.
All right, Alan, you're last.
All right. So, in looking for Windows Media Center tweaks, I stumbled across this gem of a thing. So, first thing this tool does, which is called it's from My Channel Logos.
Oh man, that looks awesome.
Well, the thing is, My Channel Logos XL is just a piece of software. It is a $5 download. It basically patches Media Center for you in such a way that you can add all the logos for all of, like, high-res logos for all the channels instead of just seeing, like, what the call sign is for the station, right? It tweaks...
That's not done by default?
No, it's not.
The software hasn't been touched since like 2007.
But here's the better stuff. All that negative space stuff we were talking about before, it actually fixes. So the channel guide gives you an extra hour worth of stuff to see in the channel guide, and it makes it a 12-line thing instead of a 7-line thing.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
And then what's not shown here in the photos, but might be shown in the video of the home theater PC review, if I'm not sure if Ken included a snippet of that in his video. When you pull up the guide while you're watching a channel, the default is to only show you 2 channels of channel guide, which you're trying to scroll through. Well, in other words, while the show is going on in the background, right? But you only get 2 lines. So at least this expands it to 4, right? Which is more like a channel guide than just 2 lines, right? And it, just does like some other various tweaks. And then these same guys also make another thing called Tuner Salad, which is a pretty funny name.
I like that. That's pretty good.
But it's a basic, I think it's like $3 or something, but it is a patch that just forces Windows Media Center into, what was it, a 32 tuner capability. So if you had 32 tuners...
Xeon cards.
Yeah. If you had 4 of those 6-channel
4 cable cards.
Xeon cards and 4 cable cards, which is like a couple bucks a month rental.
Does coax send all the channels still?
Yeah, you just fan it out to 4. Yeah. Just like you'd fan it out to 4 DVRs in your house.
If you had one, so you'd have to have 4 coax connections.
It'd be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you get a good gigahertz
whatever.
splitter. I mean, there'll be some signal degradation,
Yeah,
but it
you
won't be
use
too
a splitter, but it works with a splitter.
Try to do that in like 100 megabit internet over your coax. It is going to explode.
Why is the wall jack red?
It's just glowing.
Why are my walls on fire?
But it's
Oh,
they
well.
kind of have
Look
some
how many TV
cool
shows I
tools
can
there,
afford.
and it's supposed to work with the Windows 8 version of of Windows Media Center.
All right.
So 8.1.
What's it called again?
Well, it's
My Channel Logo.
My Channel Logos XL. The name of the site is just mychannellogos.com.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it looks relatively simple. I'm going to try it.
All right.
That's
going to wrap up the show, guys. Finally, pcper.com/podcast, URL you can go to for back episodes, videos, RSS, email links, show notes, links to all the stories we talked about today. They're all there at pcper.com/podcast. And of course, if you want to watch us record the show live, it is on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at pcper.com/live. We're going to go ahead and jump the hell out of here. It's been a long one. We'll see you guys next week. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malentano.